All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Teeth. Today we have the Dr. Richard Lowe. Richard, if you don't mind just introducing yourself, telling us what you're up to, where you went to dental school, what your journey is, and we can kind of just go from there.
Yeah, guys. No, thanks for having me on. I went to dental school, Midwestern University in Arizona. I had failed 3 classes in undergrad before I had decided I want to be a dentist. And so
Uh,
I applied to 13 dental schools and was like trying to get into different places. I was in state for Indiana,
yeah,
which is where I went to high school, but my wife's from here. There was a lot of good reasons to go here, but they were like, you know
yeah,
what? The dental school is going to be under construction, like kind of the whole time you're here, but it'll
yeah,
be really nice afterwards. And so I was like, I don't know if I want to go in state
Right.
then, even though it'd be a lot cheaper. But I did the Army scholarship to pay for dental school. So I was like, I can go
nice.
wherever
Oh,
I want to
nice.
go. They're picking up the
Yeah,
Sure.
bill. And I really liked Midwestern. It
Mm.
was just a brand shiny new school. They were like nice to the students. The students were happy. I was like, this is confusing. I thought,
yeah, that's a juxtaposition right there.
yeah. I was like, I thought you're supposed to be miserable. Ended up getting in there and went to Midwestern in Arizona. There's two Midwesterns, the Illinois one and the Arizona one,
Yeah,
and loved it. It was pretty awesome.
yeah. So it's funny you mentioned the construction thing because our school just announced, we're in our second year now, they just broke ground on an extension of our dental school, and they're going to start construction this summer. And they're claiming that it's going to be done within the next year, but we're just going to get, like you said, like the worst of it, just construction for the next 2 years, and then it'll be really nice.
The funny thing is that it turns out they didn't even start construction until I would have graduated. So like the fact they were
No
saying that at my
way.
Wow.
interview deterred me, but then like in the end it took me four
Yeah.
Yeah,
years to even start.
yeah, it's
That's
always
wild.
like that. So, how was your experience with the HPSP program, the Army Scholarship?
I loved it. The funny thing is that like I've always been an entrepreneur. Like since I was a kid, I
Mm,
would buy Otter Pops, like the popsicles, and freeze them and sell them for a quarter each. My buddies would be like riding their
yeah.
bikes around the neighborhood, drumming up business. I had a paper route. I
Yeah.
through high school and
Anything.
all through undergrad. It was more being scared of the debt. And
100%.
I didn't mind. I was like, I want to serve. I believe in serving in our country. I'm willing to go
Sure.
travel.
Mhm.
Maybe we'll do something cool, go to Europe.
Right.
Yeah.
I was married. I got married in undergrad. And so
Oh,
we were
cool.
making
Nice.
this decision together. It's like, am I going to get deployed or anything? I didn't get deployed. Also, didn't go anywhere cool. We were in Fort Hood, Texas, and then Oklahoma, and then a
Okay.
little bit of Indiana, actually. But it was great. I did a 2 year AEGD residency, learned a ton, did a ton of implants, did like pretty much every specialty, got to learn endo with the scope. And ironically, started a podcast while I was still in the Army about practice ownership, which seems
Nice.
weird. It is a little weird
Yeah.
because I couldn't own a dental practice, but I was like, I'm
Yeah.
stuck in the Army for 5 years. I might as well podcast about practice ownership. So once I get
Sure.
out,
Mhm.
then maybe I'll know what I'm doing. I won't be behind by 5 years.
Yeah.
Sense.
Knowing what I know now, if you buy correctly the right practice and grow it intelligently, you can grow an $800,000 practice to 1.5 to million plus, and you can do that in a relatively short period of time if you buy the right practice. It's
Mhm.
Sure.
like that won't happen for a lot of people, but I've just seen it done enough in our like 700 episodes of podcasting, all of our coaching clients. So like
Sure.
looking
Mhm.
back, it probably financially I actually would have gotten ahead if I had gotten straight out of dental school, found the right practice, bought the right
Right.
practice within a year or two, and
Mm.
that over 4 years rather than doing 6 years in the Army.
Yeah.
But I also wouldn't have been stuck in the Army, and I wouldn't have started the podcast. I wouldn't have started shared practices.
Yeah.
Everything happens for a reason. Everyone's got their own
Agreed.
journey, and I don't particularly regret it in retrospect.
Yeah.
For sure.
100%.
Yeah. That's a neat story too. Just how you transition from HPSP and being in the Army to like what you do today. So after you served in your 4 years of the scholarship, what did you do like immediately after? Were you working or
Yeah.
a startup? How
And
did
so
that go?
because of the 2 year AEGD in the Army, I was in for 6 years total. And
I see.
the podcast, I started 1 year after graduation. You guys are ahead of the curve. You guys are starting in dental school. But I started it 1 year after graduating. And
Okay.
by the time I got out, I had done some weird things. I bought 3 practices when we moved to Indiana while I was still in the Army. They all had doctors in them. I
Wow.
had to buy them with some
Yeah.
I see.
partners. Don't recommend that. You can't usually buy practices when you're in the military.
That's unreal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask, is that something that like the military can help you fund, or is
No.
it through like a bank? No.
Yeah. Well, and in fact, the problem was I told the practices were healthy practices. They were profitable. There was 3
Sure.
Mhm.
doctors who were going to stick around past the
Right.
purchase.
Mm.
And so that was the only reason it worked, because I couldn't work full time in them. But
I
the
see.
banks were like, you don't know what you're doing. You haven't bought any practices and
Right.
you don't have a bunch of money saved up. It was $2.7 million purchase price. They're like, this is way above what we would lend to someone their first time around.
Yeah.
So like I was just a bundle of red flags to the bank. The banks wanted nothing to do with me. So I had to get partners. So I had partners that were 50-50 partners on all 3 of those practices and ran those through COVID. Realized that while I was still in the Army and still podcasting for shared practices, I realized really quick it's stressful to have 3 offices because you've got triple the assistants and hygienists
Yeah,
and patient
Sure.
drama, plus now doctor drama.
man.
Every time
That's probably the worst part.
yeah, doctors are hard to employ. I'm not going to lie.
I could
Yeah.
imagine.
Everyone complains about hygienists, but it's like you got a drama queen doctor and
Yeah.
life gets really difficult really quick. And
Could
Yeah.
imagine.
yeah, so I ended up walking away actually from those 3. I was like, "Hey guys, this isn't for me. We tried all these different things. Like, how can we work this out?" And in the end, it was like, "Here, cancel out my debt and my equity," and they refinanced me off the loan. And in the meantime, we started a consulting company. The podcast turned into a coaching and consulting company where we helped people buy their first dental practice and then grow
Oh,
it. And we
nice.
got really good at growing from like 1 to 2 to 3 doctors. That became something we
Sure.
figured out the formula for. So
Yeah.
I had friends that bought dental practices before even I bought these 3 and grew them and made a ton more money while I was still podcasting about it. Like they were taking the information from the podcast and applying it. I had
Mhm.
a friend who it was these 2 texts a year apart. He texted
Mhm.
me. This is like one of my best buddies from undergrad, Scott Smith, and he's been on the podcast several times. He's, dude, thank you so much. Because of shared practices, I bought my first practice and I've I paid more in taxes this year than I made as an associate last year, which is a good
That
thing.
is a
It was
big
like made
Sure.
so
yeah.
much
Right.
money that he was paying so much taxes than it was much more than he'd even made
Yeah.
as an associate. And then a
For
year
sure.
Yeah.
later, he texted me. He was like, "Dude, I'm a millionaire now because of shared practices." And in the meantime, I'm still like in the Army, and I'm still like
Yeah,
Yeah.
just making podcasts. Yeah,
exactly just
dude, that's
talking about it.
awesome. Yeah, so for
For
those of
sure.
the listeners who aren't familiar with shared practices or the podcast or what y'all do, you mind just kind of
Sure.
explaining what shared practices is, how y'all help doctors, what y'all's podcast is about, and just giving us a little overview of it?
Yeah. When I started the podcast, the number one goal was like, how do I help people buy their first practice and do it right and not buy a lemon? Because there's like the
Mm,
practice you buy is this massive inflection point. If someone buys the wrong practice and they overpay for it, all of a sudden they're like upside down on it. They're super
yeah.
Sure.
stressed. They have to grind it out to try and even make it profitable. And some practices have a really hard ceiling on it because it's like you buy a 3-op practice, you can never grow that to $1.5 million to a $2 million practice. There's just not enough
Right.
space.
Mm,
Sure.
So that decision of where to buy, that was my original goal with the podcast. We did over 700 episodes on the original podcast feed, and you can still
yeah.
find all of it if you go to search for Shared Practices Archive. There's
Right.
a
Mm,
whole separate feed that pops up as all of our original episodes. So we do have seminars. We do these 2-day
hmm
courses. We've got one for pre-owners for like dental students, young dentists who they're like, I'm intimidated. I don't know where to even start.
hmm
I don't know how to like look at
Sure.
practices, what to buy. And we give them the tools to find the diamond in the rough, which is the practice that's like ready to grow. So it's like
Right.
that practice that you can walk into and within 6 months, 12 months, like 30, 40, 60% growth of that practice.
Right.
mm,
And then we help people, we actually do the due diligence. We now have due diligence services where we'll pull all the data, all the financials, help you with the attorney stuff, and then we coach practices. So we've got coaches that coach one-on-one. So that's been really fun because it's been cool on the
yeah.
podcast. We've
For sure.
had people on that used our buyer's rep. They coached with us for a year, and then we get to have the podcast interview after that point and hear their whole journey buying their first practice for the first time, and like what they were scared about before they bought, in the middle of
Right.
it, growing it, and now where
Yeah.
it's at and where they're going today. So it's
Mhm.
really cool to see that all evolve in front of our eyes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is super sweet and like applicable to anyone who's getting out and interested in purchasing a practice. Richard, what just in general terms, like what is y'all's like top metric in like finding a practice or an acquisition and determining if that practice is worth acquiring? Is it like bottom line that y'all typically approach the situation, or is it like total revenue?
Yeah.
What are some metrics that y'all in particular appreciate that would determine if a practice is worth acquisition or not?
Yeah. This is why we do a 2-day seminar on that very question.
For sure.
But if we were to boil it down, there's a couple of layers. The first is just like profitability. If a practice
Sure.
isn't profitable now, that's the nice part about acquiring a practice. You walk into making more money than you would have made as an associate just by buying it, doing the same thing the last guy did or the last gal did. You just walk in,
Sure.
you've got an asset. So, is the practice currently profitable? Number one. And number two, the patient base. Does this practice have a lot of patients you could quickly reactivate? Is there a lot of recurring hygiene patients in that practice? How many hygienists does the practice have
Sure.
versus how much dentistry is the doctor doing? Because if you see a
Hmm.
practice with 400, 600, 700 active patients, which is not a lot for one doctor, but the doctor
Sure.
Hmm.
is like doing like 1.5 million of production, which I've seen recently, that's actually a big red flag because they're doing like crowns on every tooth.
Crazy.
They're like
Yeah.
squeezing every little drop of dentistry out of that
Yeah.
Big
patient base.
procedures and stuff.
Yeah, you walk in and all the
Hard
dentistry's
to
been done.
reproduce.
The patients don't really trust you because you're the new guy. It's like driving a new car off the lot and it instantly depreciates. So, how much dentistry versus how much hygiene there is a really important factor to look at. So, profitability, patient base, how quickly we could easily grow the patient base, which has to do with a lot of different things. And then that ratio of can you reproduce the dentistry that's being done here, or can you even add things? Versus, I looked at a $1.9 million practice to buy as I was getting out of the army. And
Sure.
the doctor was doing like everything. He had like multiple CEREC machines. He was doing implants. He was doing like veneers,
Yeah.
doing all the procedures. He had another doc there part time, all the latest toys and technology. And he was a high producer, fast. His case acceptance was
Sure.
good. I was like, there's no way I can do what this guy does. There's no room for
Right.
Hmm.
growth. He was asking $1.9 million. If I buy this practice, I can't keep up. And
Right.
so it was like, man, I'm not going to buy this practice. Versus, I also don't love buying a practice that's too small, like a $200,000-$300,000 practice. If you know what you're
Right.
doing, you can find a diamond in a rough that you're like, we could get this to 800K to a million pretty quick. And then there's
I
the
see.
runway to grow this up to 1.5 to 2 million. But a
Right.
lot of those have hard ceilings in terms of the space. Usually,
Hmm.
the same factors that led them to be a small practice are going to be there afterwards. So if it's like a high competition area, the population to dentist ratio is great. There's a chance that like you're not the magic ingredient that's going to turn everything around, and you are
Yeah.
some of the same barriers that they had to growth.
Right.
Hmm. No, that makes sense. Richard, I know that y'all do a lot of the coaching too, but we've also had a couple of shared practices doctors on our
Mm.
podcast with the Dentist and Implant Group. So, when did y'all decide to go from podcasting to coaching to basically starting y'all's own shared practices dental group?
Group, yeah. So that same story that I was talking about those 3 practices that I bought, this was we started the coaching in like 2018. We
Mm-hmm.
started the seminars and the coaching. And then I bought those practices in 2019 and then ran them
Hmm.
through COVID, and I walked away in 2020, kind of late summer COVID. And then the following year I officially got out of the army. And I
Hmm.
bought a denture practice here in Indianapolis that wasn't doing any implants, added implants
Yeah.
to it. And in the meantime, my partners George and Austin, they were doing They did 3 startups in Phoenix that were denture and implant practices. And we realized this model, there's something here. It's a little bit more complex than and
Right.
higher risk than
Yeah.
a GP practice because there's no recurring patients. Patients don't get all their
Hmm.
teeth pulled twice. You
Yeah.
get
Sure.
one shot and then there's no recurring patient base at that point. There's no more
Right.
Yeah.
procedures to do. You've done them all. So it's a harder model because you got to be willing to put a lot of money into marketing. You got to know how to
Right.
have a practice that's not centered around hygiene. We were like, maybe we should do this together. And the funny part, it was like right after I walked away from those 3 practices, and I was like, nah, screw this. I'm not doing
Hmm.
multi-practice. George is like, Richard, I think we're going to do a group. Freak, come on. I just walked away from
Yeah.
this. What are we
Right.
doing? So that's where it started. And it was a pretty incredible journey. A lot of great doctors that came on board, a lot of growth for me and
Sure.
my co founders. And we started 10 offices our first year and then 20 offices our second year, which is insane. I've never heard of a
Yeah.
distro adding that many offices. And honestly, the stress of it broke me. Like I had to step down as CEO. I was not coping well because there's just a lot of pressure. It's a lot of
Yeah.
debt, a lot of things can go
Understandable.
wrong. I was the CEO of 35 offices and I was like, what am I doing? And I felt like I was the
Right.
one getting in the way of the success of SPG. And so I
Hmm.
turned it over to Dr. Alex Sharp, who was much more confident and knew what he was doing in terms of leadership, having run his own very large multi-doctor practice on his own. And then
Yeah.
there's some
Sure.
people that have that like discipline and that like self-starter. And I don't know, I'm more the like ADHD guy over here.
Yeah.
I'm good on
I
podcasts,
Yeah.
I'm
feel
good on
that.
meetings, but like ask me
Yeah.
to run a bunch of projects and run startups and do a bunch of behind the scenes stuff and I fall apart. And so
Yeah.
that was my side of it. You ask my partners, you're going to hear very different stories, but it was because the experience has been very different for all of us. It's been an incredible journey, and I've stepped back completely. So I'm now just back to podcasting. I was like, this is what I started off doing.
Yeah.
Sure.
Doing what you love, man. That's awesome.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
important, I think, in dentistry to know your sweet spot. There's this
Yeah.
spectrum of clinician to entrepreneur. And some people are
Hmm.
like, man, I just love clinical. I don't ever really want to think about the business stuff. I just want to show up, do my dentistry, go home. And if you know that about yourself, don't force yourself to own. Don't beat yourself up if you're not doing some crazy dental multi practice thing. So find a great office with a great team, a great owner, and just do the dentistry and go home, make good money, and be a dentist. And then on the other side of it, if you're entrepreneurial, the question is, how entrepreneurial are you? And my hypothesis,
That's a tall ceiling right there.
it is. You can do so much. But what I push people to is before you do multi practice, like a crazy person, build one large, profitable, healthy office that almost doesn't even need you to run. It's so well run that you could take
Hmm.
off for a month and nothing would really break. You've trained an office
Yeah.
manager and a team, you've got multiple doctors. And my
Sure.
hypothesis is that one practice like that will provide you more money, more fulfillment, more problems than you could ask for. And you're like, you know what? I'm good.
Hmm.
I have lots of options. I can live a lifestyle that I want to. And then go build another type business that's not dentistry, or go invest in stuff, or go do charity, go work on the other aspects of your life rather
Yeah.
than just continuing to scale because
For sure.
you can make $1 million a year owning one large, healthy practice.
Hmm.
Right.
It's not common. The hard part about podcasts is that you hear these numbers and we throw them around like
Yeah.
it's no big deal, but
Right.
95% of dentists will never see those kinds of numbers in a dental practice. But if
For
you
Hmm.
sure.
know what you're doing as an entrepreneur, there really is incredible opportunities open to you. I was the dental student who like just was so hungry for this information. And we'll go and like lecture at dental schools, and there's a huge
Right.
difference between when we do a lecture with ASDA students versus if
Hmm.
they've got like a business club. The people who
Yeah.
show
Right.
up to the business club, like lunch and learns that we do,
Sure.
are just like on it and they're like thinking about all this
Yeah.
stuff. And the ASDA, like general,
It's just everyone.
just
Right.
everyone, they're just there for the
Yeah. Just
pizza.
all
They don't
just
have any
quiet. Yeah.
questions.
For
Like the
sure.
lecture's over. I'm like, okay, what do you guys think? What are you worried about? And they're like, we're good. Thanks for the pizza. Thanks for the book. Bye.
Yeah.
And I'm like, guys, like I I know you have a lot going on right now, but if you just start listening to like podcasts
You
about
know,
this kind of stuff,
yeah.
just plant that seed
Right.
and let it trickle in. Then by the time
Hmm.
you graduate, you're not so intimidated even thinking about this stuff. You can start to look at the practice that you knew back home and think about, okay, was that a good practice or not? Talk to the owner. How many hygienists did that practice have? You don't have to do anything with it. Just start learning. And there's so much information. And I'm
Right.
a little biased here, but that's my pet peeve is
Yeah. When they just show up for the pizza.
yeah, well,
Sure.
better than not showing up for the pizza. Like maybe this
Yeah.
is the seed that will get them going. But there's so much free
Right.
good information out there that just didn't used
I
to
agree.
exist.
Yeah, just
For
isn't
sure.
consumed. Richard, first, I just want to give you kudos for having the awareness to step down from all the stuff that was going on in shared practices. It takes a lot of reflection and realization to realize that you you're best somewhere else, and that takes a lot of putting your ego aside and things like that to see someone else is better fit for that. And for what it's worth, you seem to be really enjoying what you're doing, podcasts, and doing what you first started out to do. So really kudos to you for stepping in,
For
or
sure.
I guess stepping aside to so the share practice could thrive. And then secondly, with the podcasting stuff, I really do want to say, like, I don't think me and Vic would be here if it wasn't for shared practices. It wasn't for the Full Arch podcast. Like, I remember like my sophomore year of high school or college, that was all I listened to. Like, it's just free information, like you said, that's out there. And it's awesome to hear. And like, whenever I had heard about that and Vic came up to me saying we should start a podcast, I was like, let's do it. Like, shared practices has one. Like, they have information that I wish I'd known. And we try to bring information to the public that I wish I'd known at that point. So it's just full circle, man. And I really do want to thank you for all the content that you brought forward.
That's
For
pretty cool
sure.
for you to say. Thank you, man. No,
Yeah.
that makes me really happy because like people need what you're putting out. And so it's like the fact that what we said impacted you and now you're helping that next
For
generation.
sure.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Richard, there's
Yeah.
a first I want to make a connection to one of the points you made earlier, and then I'm going to follow up with a question. But the connection I want to make is traditionally in an acquisition and exit model type of style, you kind of in general seek a practice that has like reproducible skills within the practice. Correct me if I'm wrong, but like procedures that majority of people could handle and maybe a few specialty procedures, which initially you were saying like the doc that can do everything and has all the toys, it might be more difficult of an acquisition or an exit because it's just hard to reproduce, which is really ironic because then you switch to the full arch model, which is arguably one of the hardest procedures to reproduce, and built a model around that. So I just found it really interesting that it's super untraditional to go about that acquisition slash exit model with a procedure that's like, I mean, you can't grab any guy off the street that's a dentist and say, "Hey, come do digital workflow, full arch dentistry, and do the prosthesis." And then it's very different than the traditional practice model or a business model for a dentist. So I think that's interesting how you took a twist on how you did things with that.
It's almost this is where like we almost got bored with GP dentistry. It's like we figured that out and
Right,
we saw this opportunity that it's like a new puzzle. Like how do we figure out this puzzle and make it really good for the doctors,
right,
for the patients, to really build that culture that like it's easier to do in one office. It's still hard. It's much
right,
harder to scale culture
for
across an
sure.
organization because there's more people that could be unhappy with you at any given moment. It's a stressor
Yeah.
for me. I'm a people pleaser, I'm a perfectionist, and nothing about running a DSO is perfect and nothing about running a DSO makes everyone happy. There's always someone upset.
Right.
But yeah, no, it is ironic and it is funny that we would say this over here
Yeah,
and then we're like, we're going to go try this. It's a hard model. And
I can imagine.
I would warn doctors who don't have a foundation, like a GP foundation under them
Hmm.
and a surgical foundation before attempting something like this. And
Sure.
Hmm.
our goal is to give them that like space and those wings to really bloom into that model. It's also really stressful. I did
Yeah.
2 years of full arch dentistry and it's about 50-50. Are you the doctor who takes home clinical stress and like it's a pit in your stomach when a patient's not happy? Or can
Sure.
you just disconnect? It's here's what I do a
Work is
great
work.
job.
Sure.
Sometimes they're not going to be happy. I'm okay with that. And you don't know ahead of time. I didn't think I was a worrier, but like I worried about all the possibilities with the clinical dentistry, with everything else that goes on, the possible
Hmm.
complications, patients being upset. It's
Right.
hard. And you almost, there's like a switching point. You have to get through 6 to 12 months of being really stressed and miserable doing full arch dentistry. It's just the reality. Like you're gonna
Yeah.
be like dying a little bit at the end of every day.
Can
Yeah.
imagine.
And then there's like a day where it all of a sudden you're like something goes wrong, like a buccal plate blows out, like the bone is way mushier, and a
Mm.
part of you is just like, okay, let's see how we can make this work today. That like you've seen
Yeah.
enough crap happen,
Yeah.
you've saved enough cases, and there's still cases that no matter what you do, they just were unpredictably bad. Like you did all your due diligence up front. You
Hmm.
Sure.
knew that here were the challenges. Some of those you can thread the needle and you can still deliver a great result. And once in a while, one of them will surprise you, and you just have to give patients the bad news of, hey, this didn't work the way that I was hoping it would work the first time. Here's the journey in front of you to get to that point. But that can be really devastating for the patient, for
Understandable.
you, because it's like you do everything you can. You want to take care of them so well, and they don't have the bone. The bone is too soft. They've got
Right.
health compromises you didn't know about because they didn't even know about it. But
Right.
anyways, it's hard dentistry to do, and I just like I worried on our podcast that we would glorify a multi-doctor practice where most doctors are probably going to just do a single doctor practice, and that's
Sure.
okay. I worry
Hmm.
that like sometimes the full arch space gets glorified and people feel like that's the pinnacle of dentistry and that's where they should be going and they're all excited about it. And like I know if either one of you is like into that kind of stuff, right now you're like, nah, I'm gonna be good, Richard. I still want it. And then I'm like, all right, let's talk in 3 years. We'll see in 4 years. We'll
Yeah.
see what you guys have to say then.
I can imagine the stresses, especially
Yeah.
if someone's paying 50 grand for a procedure and
Yeah.
something doesn't go their way. It's not quite a car,
It's the
it's
car in
their
their
health.
mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, yeah. Richard, have you ever considered like a multi specialty practice? I know in general terms, GPs can do multi specialty within their practice, but I guess I mean it more so like a practice that has multiple diverse doctors within one practice. I know Craig Spodak does that with his practice down in Florida, but is that something you've ever considered in your entrepreneurial journey throughout all this
Sure.
or you work with?
Yeah. So it can work. You need a big enough practice to support it. And you probably
Yeah.
couldn't do them full time unless you had a mega practice. Because what's going to happen is, say that you have an orthodontist sitting in your office. Other GPs are not going to want to refer to that orthodontist if attached to a GP office because they're worried they're going to lose that patient to your practice. The patient, this place looks sweet, I'm
Yeah.
sticking around. So doctors are not going to refer to specialists within that practice. So that
I see.
means that you either have to have a large enough practice to support that
Right.
specialist full time, or you just
Hmm.
have the specialist part time, or you've got one large practice and some satellite practices, and all of it refer to that main office. But here's the thing, it all works, dude. And at this point, like you guys are playing the game. I know exactly what's going on in your heads. You're like, what if we did this? What about have they thought about this? And it's like, dude, there's so many ways
Yeah.
to do dentistry. You can be a successful if you follow the principles of correct entrepreneurship.
Sure.
You can do all sorts of crap and it can work really well and it can be profitable. And so you're like, yeah, I want an office where I've got a little bit of all the specialists. They all come in a day or two a week. And there's going to be
Yeah.
great things about that. There's going to be some crappy things about that. You got to manage those specialists and find chill ones and replace them when they
Yeah.
turn over. And so, yeah, Craig's doing it. Other people can
Yeah.
do it. You guys can do it if you want to, but it
I see.
would work.
Gotta
Yeah,
find a way to make it work. Yeah.
Totally.
for sure. It happens. So, Richard, what are you up to? Like right now, you're just doing podcast and that's it, or any clinical dentistry?
Yeah, great question. When I burned out, I stepped down as CEO and then I stepped into the clinical director role and which meant that all of the problem doctors were on my plate. And it's crazy. You can have if you've got 35 doctors, 30 of them, 32 of them are just amazing people, amazing doctors. You'll get two or three of them that make everyone's lives miserable. They're just like toxic people, like just saying things to team members and patients that you're just like, you're not allowed to say that to other human beings, and like
Right.
manipulative
Hmm.
and secretive and all these things. And so those were the doctors that I dealt with because I was good at having crucial conversations. And so I fully crashed and burned March of last year, just over a year ago. And I was like, I need 2 months of like unpaid medical leave. I got to figure out my mental health. I got
Wow.
to figure out my marriage, like full stop. And I think part of that is like I'd had kind of multiple full-time jobs for 8 years, and my family had to
Hmm.
make sacrifices to do shared practices on top of Army, on top of multi-practice.
Sure.
Hmm.
And so I needed to reprioritize like the stuff that really mattered to me, get diagnosed with the right stuff and get on the right meds and try and be happy again because I'd lost figuring out how to be happy. And ironically, the thing that helped the most was a men's group I joined called Superhuman Fathers. It was a ridiculous name. I went to a dental conference, and Emmett Scott, who's the CEO of dental entrepreneurial organization DEO, they're kind of like a multi-practice shared practices, but now they're helping individual practices as well.
Yeah.
He shared his transformation. He showed a before and after picture. He was like 280, 280 pounds, and
Wow.
he dropped down to 210, 220. I think he lost like 70 pounds.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And just, he had a six pack for like the first time in his life. His whole adult life, he'd just been like a big soft teddy bear dad.
Right.
And I was like dying. And he was like, this group, Superhuman Fathers, they helped me get in shape, helped me reconnect with my wife. They helped me feel better about myself, more confidence, all these things.
That's awesome.
And I was like, dude, I want that. Shut up and take my money. I don't know what this thing costs. I don't know what I'm signing up for. I swiped my credit card so fast and joined up. And then after I paid for it, I was like, so what is it? What do I have to do? Do I have to go to the gym? Turns out, yes, I had to go to the gym. It was this insane group of men who really cared about each other and actually talked about the real crap that's like eating them up.
Yeah.
Most guys get
Hmm.
together, they talk about sports, they talk about video games, they talk about anything other than actually their
Reality.
problems. Because that's why we hang out. We don't want to think about our problems. We don't want to think about our stressors. We just want to like
Sure.
chill,
Just watch the
just
game.
watch the
Yeah.
Right.
game. Yeah.
Big guys.
So this group for me, I lost 50 pounds. I got in the best shape of my life,
Yeah.
really worked on my
Kudos.
marriage, really worked on reconnecting with faith and God. And it was incredible. And my buddy Hunter, who's an endodontist in Florida, he joined
Hmm.
up. And after doing this for a couple months, he was like, Richard, you've got to do this, but for dentistry. He was like, we need to create our own version of this. Because the Superhuman Fathers, they were like blue collar. They were pretty rough around the edges. Like
I
some of
see.
the
So
guys,
this wasn't
Yeah.
just dentistry.
it
It
was not
was
dental at all. It was
okay.
Yeah.
like these are like firefighters and cops and ex-military and sales guys and roofers and
Right.
Hmm.
just all walks of life. And some guys like every
For
other
sure.
word was like the F bomb and just
Right.
F
Yeah.
this, F that. But like the kindest, like most caring, oh, I effing found Jesus. And like they were just
Yeah.
really good guys. But my buddy Hunter was like, I think we can do a more buttoned up version of this and get a bunch of dentists in here and have this amazing mastermind of dentists trying to work on themselves. And so I was like,
For
okay,
sure.
I got to figure out something to do. I either need the bank account's going to run out at some point. I either need to buy a dental practice or
Yeah.
start this group and make it work. And so I launched it in October and
Nice.
we got 20 guys in October. We're up to about 30 right now. It's been awesome. We've lost 450 pounds since November as a group.
Nice.
Nice.
And just like genuine, sincere guys who are showing up for each other through the ups and downs of practice ownership, through the ups and downs of marriage and raising small kids and finding fulfillment
Hmm.
in other stuff other than being a dentist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's my full-time gig. So now I'm trying to figure out, I got to scale on social media. I got to figure out how to have a pipeline of people who are interested and follow up with them and take care of the
Uh-huh.
people that I'm serving right now in this group. And then I
Hmm.
podcast for shared practices. It's funny, from my men's group, whenever like we get into practice stuff, I'm like, I can help you up to a certain point, but go just friggin' hire a coach at shared practices. Like they're gonna fix your practice.
Yeah. Don't know more. Yeah.
Yeah, like why wouldn't you get the help that you need to here? So it's
Mm.
fun to see I'm doing everything else over here, and then I send them over to shared practices when it comes to
Yeah. For the work.
the business stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I'm doing
That's
right now.
awesome, that man.
Yeah. Dude, that's awesome that y'all first found this group and then are helping incorporate this into dentistry because I'm sure like whenever you dedicate your whole life to this one thing, it obviously overtakes everything. Like you put life, faith, your family like on the back burner and you focus fully on this. So again, it just takes a lot of self-awareness to realize where you are in life and being able to take a step back and join a group that's helping you and now you're passing forward and helping other people. So that really is awesome to see.
Thanks, man. No, yeah, it's my group is now Next Level Fathers. So far, I don't have a women's group. I don't feel like I'm an authority at leading a women's
Yeah.
group, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But yeah, if anyone's interested, follow me on Instagram, dr.richard.low, or just to watch my like weird reels. Like I did a series of reels about how video games was one of my like coping mechanisms. Like I felt like I had a
Uh-huh.
video game addiction, and it
Uh-huh.
affected my ability to lead and work and manage
Right.
my stress. And so I did like a 4-part series of reels talking about that recently. So if you just want to see like
Yeah.
me make reels about crap, come follow me on
Yeah.
Instagram, and maybe
Yeah.
you want to get shredded, like we can do that too.
Yeah, dude. That sounds like a deal. But Richard, we've mentioned shared practices in a variety of ways. We've talked about starting off podcasting, then, coaching, and now we're talking about surgery, and now you have your men's group. Like, what is your future vision in terms of diversifying shared practices? Because right now y'all are branching out into all types of categories. Is there any specific like goal that you're setting out to do, or is it just helping doctors along the way?
Yeah, I think there's two questions in there. I think one is what is shared practices as a whole going to do? And since I've
Hmm.
stepped down, like I'm really not
Hmm.
in control of any of that. We're always looking to help doctors in different ways. And the crazy things we've almost done, we actually had a letter of intent on a like 7-story building in Georgia to buy a dental school and start a dental school at one point. Like
Oh my
we
gosh.
got way further down that road than we ever thought we would. We've thought about we tried doing like a little bit of a marketing firm within shared practices. We have legal now, so we've got attorneys within shared practices that can help people
Nice.
look at leases and asset purchase agreements, buying a practice,
Yeah.
and even current dentists who are associateship agreements. We've done tons of that kind of stuff. We tried to do marketing and it didn't quite work out for us. I'm sure we're going to do a bunch of other things. To be honest, though, like I don't even know. And it changes all the time.
For
Yeah.
Operationally, I'm
sure.
not in there. For me personally, I want to continue to help dentists in their pain points. And
Hmm.
it, talking about entrepreneurship for 9 years, it's almost like moving into a rich neighborhood and then like you isolate yourself from like all the problems in the world because you're like you just
Yeah.
live over here and you got your gated community.
Yeah.
And so that's what the shared practices listeners and clients were. It's like these dentists who are really ambitious and really want to go after what's possible by being a practice owner. But there's a
Right.
whole
Hmm.
ton of dentists over here who are struggling. And
Hmm.
like the stress, the financial stresses, the clinical stresses, the family stuff, injuries, like all these things that can go wrong. You buy the wrong practice ownership just isn't for you and you've bought a practice.
Hmm.
For sure.
My goal is let's go figure some of these things out. And I started a Facebook group recently called Next Level Dentist Rising Beyond Burnout. Because I
Hmm.
think there's a lot of dentists that are burned out and they've got anxiety and they've got mental health stuff. And
Right.
it's hard to like untangle, is this like diagnosable mental health? Is this situational? Is this a phase? Is this a
Hmm.
midlife crisis? So for me, all of the stuff outside of clinical dentistry and entrepreneurship, that's the stuff I'm interested in talking about and
Yeah.
podcasting
Yeah.
about. And I don't have a space, like maybe there'll be a YouTube channel, maybe there'll be a podcast about this kind of stuff. But that's where I'm interested. And shared
Yeah.
practices overall, who knows what we'll do in the next 3, 5 years.
Yeah.
For
I'm sure it'll
sure.
be pretty cool.
And I
Yeah.
think too, Richard, with all thus far you've accomplished in your career, you deserve that fuel you get from doing the things you do now versus total entrepreneurship, cowboy activity. But as we wrap up here, Richard, what do you think you could have done differently in your career to, I don't even want to say be more sustainable, but
Oh,
more so
definitely.
just
You can say that.
have a better, I don't know, just I guess healthier and more life in your journey, because everybody faces struggles, which happens to everyone. So you've got to see, you're able to see both ends of it a little more clearly now that you've really recognized yourself, like, oh, maybe it's not cool to be stressed out all the time or this and that. So what do you think you could have done differently?
Yeah, I think, and this is so stereotypical, but like, in there's no reason you can't be happy today. And I think getting into dental school, getting through dental school, getting into practice ownership, building to a certain point, there's this delayed, like, I'm sacrificing now for future benefit. And at a
For
certain
sure.
point, you'll walk into a Walmart and realize I could buy absolutely anything in here. It's not a very high bar to clear, but for a lot of
Sure.
the population to just be able to buy whatever you want off Amazon or Walmart is not a
Yeah.
real option for people. And we clear that bar for having lots of options. You'll get there if you keep learning, if you keep growing as a dentist, and you don't take really challenging opportunities, which sometimes you got to pivot. Sometimes you got to walk away from partnerships. Sometimes you got to leave an associateship that's not providing for you. Sometimes you got to move, get out of a city that is overpopulated with dentists. But you
Hmm.
can be happy along the way and appreciate wanting something. When you can't do the clinical dentistry that you want to do, it's actually really exciting to learn that stuff. It's exciting to take the
Hmm.
courses. And you start to hit diminishing returns at some point where you're like, if I go to a course, like 95% of everything I'm already going to know, and I'm just going for that last 5%. Versus in
Right.
the
Hmm.
early days, you're like drinking from a
I need to
fire
know
hose, you're
everything.
soaking
Yeah.
it up, you love it. Same things when you're growing a business and you're like figuring things out. There is this like intensity. It's like a game that matters. It's like the score matters. And there'll come a point where you don't get to have as much fun. And maybe I'm wrong, maybe this is just me, in the figuring things out, figuring out the clinical dentistry, figuring out how to make money in dentistry, how to get ahead. And you might get to the end of all that and realize, oh, this didn't make me happy. There was not a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. I should have figured out how to be happy along the way. That's what I would tell myself, and maybe do a little bit less side hustle crap and go on more walks with my wife or with the kids.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And I still put the kids to bed every night. I tried to be balanced and all these things, but it got unbalanced. And I think my wanting for something in the future led me to burnout in that way.
for sure. That's
Yeah.
real. And Sod and I both, I could speak for him too. We appreciate you bringing light to that, especially in dental school too, because dental school
Mm.
is this and that. There's like barely any light in that tunnel. I think it's very real too for our listeners to hear that if they're applying to dental school or in dental school, and maybe take a moment to realize that it's fortunate enough to be in dental school because not many people get that opportunity.
100%. And I'll tell you the one thing that do not miss out on, there will never be a time in your life that you spend this much time with a friend group that's suffering in the same way you are.
Oh, 100%.
I
And
I
like
Yeah.
see what you
that might
mean.
seem like a bad thing, but like that's where the best friendships come from, is when you're doing
Hmm.
something hard together. And so don't be a lone wolf in dental school. Find a group of people that like you can really support and help, and then be miserable together. And actually that's fun. And you will be lifelong friends.
Yeah.
Once you're a practice owner, you don't have that. You're the boss, you're alone,
Right,
and it's hard in your social circles, in your church groups, in your neighborhood to find people that can relate to you, that have the same kind of goals, that are clinicians, that are entrepreneurs. And it's actually far
for
harder
sure.
to find those kinds of friends. And
Hmm.
so I would say the friendships in particular, that's the best part of dental school, is like you're suffering together, you're miserable together, and that's actually
Let's
fun.
go.
Yeah.
Awesome. Richard, as we wrap here, do you have any last remarks you'd like to make or advice for dental students or recently grad dental students, just that you've learned on your journey or anything that you would like to say to have a more prosperous career within dentistry?
Like comparison is the thief of joy, and anything bad that happens to you can be turned into a good thing, because you will always, there will be someone who makes more money, there will be someone who seems happier on Instagram, there will be someone who gets married faster, who has cuter kids, who, all the things, they're more talented. And if you're
Right.
living that world, dentists can get wrapped up in it because we can do pretty good and we can look really good on a lot of fronts. Be grateful for your journey and the crap you face, and turn around and use those hard things as fuel, as opportunities to be grateful for what you do have to be grateful for. And there'll probably be someone down the road that you can help through whatever you're going through right now. someone else will
Mhm.
benefit through those hard times. You guys are doing it live. You're doing it as a podcast, which is like a
Mhm.
perfect way to give back as you're going through it yourself. So just keep that perspective that like bad stuff is okay and it can turn into good stuff. Just give it enough time and look at it in the right way and work through it the best you can. It'll be good.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thanks for keeping it
awesome
real,
advice.
Richard. We appreciate that. And I know that many of our listeners will appreciate you keeping it real with them too, and not just sugarcoating everything as a dentist. So, yeah, man, me and Saad really appreciate you coming on, and thank you for the nuggets that you provided. And we look forward to connecting with you again.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Saad, Victor,
thank you,
great to
man.
meet you guys. Thank you for
Nice
having
to
me
meet
on.
you, man.
Likewise.